a good time to take a few moments and compose ourselves. How often do folks take the time to merely sit and ask themselves, what are they thinking about? What's going on in the interior life of a person? I believe that we don't often put that into language. Seldom do folks think of a theme and think it through. Sometimes folks aren't particularly fond of the way they operate or the way they think. And at that, they seldom take the time to think very thoroughly on one or two important subjects. So in reality, there is very little thought. There is much interior monologue, but there's very little thought. it might be thought that everyone here tonight has a good, clear idea of why they are here. I think very few people have asked themselves within the last 2 hours, why are they here? And I think that even a smaller amount has given a precise and thorough in-look into a question like that. It's perhaps so customary to devote a moment or two to thinking about something and giving it a quick answer and solution. People can ask themselves, how often do they take the energy and the effort to really think something through very deeply? Sue, perhaps you could shut that a bit. I think it's rather windy.
I think it's open or shut. There's no in between, right?
There's open or shut or in between? There's no in between. Oh my, then shut. Do what you can for that poor leaf. No need to make it suffer. So all the important subjects are still as bare or as naked as they were ages ago. But admittedly, it takes time to think. And as we all very well know, time is money. Well, how can we squander fortunes merely thinking? There's absolutely no profit in that. Perhaps we'll think about that tomorrow. Sometimes I ask people some interesting questions because I enjoy hearing answers. One of my favorites is, how much money would you like to accumulate before you come to the decision that you will no longer work for profit? I've been asking that many years, and I've seldom, if ever, gotten a real number. I'm led to think that a horse is in his stall at the starting gate. There's a ringing sound, the doors fly open, and the horse runs ahead. To win this race or to partake in it, he has to reach a certain spot. Quarter mile for some, half mile. Now, when the horse has reached that place, the race is over. Or else what will we have? Horses going to run forever? They will go from New York to Virginia to Mississippi, California, Catalina Island, Hawaii, and still be running. And one of them might turn around and say, does this damn thing ever end? I'm tired. So if I were to ask, of course, this chair belongs to Mr. Smith, very few, or Miss Smith, depending upon my mood. So. And James is the particular co-chair of that chair. See if Mr. Smith and Miss Smith get everything that's coming to them. A fond wish that I have for everyone. What would happen if there were no end to this race? The horses run until they drop in their tracks, I suppose. Until they get too tired. Or until nobody cares anymore. Nobody can win the race. I don't think anyone here would bet $5 on that kind of race. Same way people run, there's an end to it. People play tennis or basketball or hoops or bingo. And there's an end to it. So if I am rude enough to ask, at what dollar amount do you consider you will terminate the idea of working in businesses? I think nobody would be embarrassed to say $45 million. Does that sound good? Too cheap. $70 million. $170 million. Not enough? $584 million for Mr. Smith. That's when he's going to stop. Well, now he has something to work for. Now he has a plan. Now he's in a race or an enterprise that has an ending. Perhaps it's my psychic malnourishment that causes me to believe that something that doesn't have an end or a beginning or a middle is rather a shapeless mush of goo. And I will bet that very few people here, if any, have set themselves a money amount to strive for. Because that's a rather hard issue. What happens when you get there? Then what will you do? Etc., etc., etc. So perhaps most folks, like horses without finish lines, will just keep running till they drop in their tracks. The saddle falls off, the shoes go flying. The jockey has become too old to ride a horse, and the race is still going because there's no ending. And I am truly amazed that throughout the years that I've been speaking to people, no one has yet come up with a number. In fact, to my knowledge, no one has even given this serious consideration. I guess all the horses will run till they're old and sick and demented and mad and drop in their tracks. No one seems to have a better solution. All right. Mr. Smith says that this subject is hurting him and causing him a degree of anxiety. And in a rather muffled tone, he is saying to me, please talk about something else. I can't stand it anymore. I'll do that. But you're not going to like this one any better. If you're not bursting to leave by now, then perhaps you'll mention your name so I can... Christy. Kristen. I don't have to say then, hey, Kristen. That was a silly subject anyway. Who likes horses? You know for a fact, a real true fact, John Wayne did not like horses. He never did like horses. He never owned a horse. This was how he made a living. He thought they were rather stupid animals. But That's my horse story for the day. Now, while we're thinking so profoundly, has everyone here really given quality and depth of thought to the idea of why they wish to be involved with what's loosely called a significant other? I know that people have given a lot of, I can't call it thought really, but kind of thought, talking to yourself, going around the same corner for days at a time, or maybe years at a time. I want a significant other. Where are they? I've gone to the bars to look for significant others, they're not there. I've gone to the zoo, they're hiding. I look up and down the street, I say, hey, could you be my significant other? They hit you, they call the police. Nobody has sat down and written a volume or two on the internet or to themselves or in little notebooks, or even yourself, and don't tell anybody, because maybe the other person will be offended, or they'll realize how little you've thought about this or anything. But here's the question. Why on earth, or anywhere else, is the idea of a significant other of importance to you? I don't want to hear people's thoughts. Perhaps I couldn't take it, but no need to. No need to throw it all out there. But what would we think if somebody said, because I don't want to feel lonely? And somebody else is crude enough to say, well, why don't you get a dog? Why do you want, and use the large, why do you want a significant other? In some areas it's called the victim. Mind you, I've heard that said many, many times. Especially in AA, they always say, and now you've got to do victim. I've made her do captive. Is it that the person can't stand themselves enough to live by themselves? Possible. So they hunt and look and talk to their analyst and talk to their priest or whoever they talk to. Finally, they capture somebody. Well, now what are you going to do? Now what do you do? Hello, fellow captive. How are you? I'm fine. How was your day? Good. You're angry with me. You've been thinking that I did not mention you in my will or leave you the amount that you have in mind. Do you really want to be around me when I'm old and ancient and the spirit coming out the corner? Is that what you wish to do? Is that called spending the rest of your life with me? I don't have the courage to think of it the other way. I'm not that brave. But perhaps you want somebody to be around you when you're old and crippled and farty and all those other things. Or maybe you want somebody to belittle them for the rest of their lives. You know, Gladys, I thought you were a little smarter than that when I married you. Good heavens. And I'm sure you can think of 1,000 more pastimes that people have with each other. They call it a significant other, a mate even. And we here as observers tonight can ask those people, why? Could it be that someone's intention is to try to make the other person's life better, fuller, richer, nicer? That could be. So I wonder, how come so many people don't do it? Well, if anybody is honest enough to say, Gladys, I married you to make you happier and give you a life fulfillment and read you. And Gladys turns around and says, you're nuts. I never felt that for 5 minutes with you. What you've done is you ruined my life. Oh. So perhaps it's fortunate that people don't give these kind of ideas too much thinking, because they might hurt themselves. Anyway, you're groovy and you've got great legs and your uppers are pretty good, and let's get married. Because it's so close to Christmas, you will all have to forgive me. It's part of it. Are you willing to forgive me for what I say and discuss?
In advance?
Well, of course. But in the future, afterwards, I don't need your forgiveness. He said, how dare I? I've never yet, and for me, never yet is a lot longer time than for you when you say never yet. I want to have children. That's it. I want to have children. Nobody who has any semblance of civility would ask, why? Why? What's the matter with your life the way it is now without children that you wish to improve it by having children? I mean, the planet is already a pretty crowded place, you know. There's trillions of them already. I want to have some more. Why? I think that to do something as intensely serious as that, because hey, there's already, the population has more than doubled since I was a kid in grammar school. I would think it would be a good idea to have an extremely good reason to do so. I want my name to continue. I've heard that one maybe, but why do people want to have children? To have another life to power over? Possible reason. To have someone take care of you and help you when you get older. Maybe some people want that. Maybe some people even want a tax deduction. I don't know. Maybe some people want a son that you can go visit in jail every 2 weeks. What? A lot of sons are in jail and parents come to visit them, so I guess that's a truism. Oh, my son would never go to jail. Yeah, but look, everybody's in jail had a mother and father, and they all said that too. So, why do you want to have children? Why does anybody want to have children? Perhaps here and there is a rare soul who may say, I don't want to have children. Let them get born by themselves. Poof. And they materialize. I'm so advanced from my last life that I didn't need parents, I just materialized. Yeah. So you'll work for X amount of time, for X amount of money. What was the other race? What was the other theme?
Horses.
Well, that horses was the race.
Significant others.
Excuse me? Significant other. Folks approaching 40 better start questioning their retentive powers. So we got rid of kids, we got rid of marriages, we got rid of horse races. You want to have friends. Sometimes friends become significant others, but sometimes they just stay friends and Sometimes they go by themselves and save you 40, 50 years of damnation. Well, friends. I won't have a friend. You said that, haven't you? I can tell by the way you're laughing. You once said to yourself, I want to have a friend. You said that, haven't you, son? You said that? Well, I asked the person who says they want to have a friend, what do you want to have a friend for? Have you got a good, real, solid reason for having a friend? Of course, before that comes the idea, what is a friend? And everybody being free thinkers has their own idea. This is what a friend is. That's subchapter A. Subchapter B. Are you a friend to anyone? For that you would have to know, at least in your own scheme of things, what a friend is. What do you want a friend? Do you know how many people, or have you known any people, who sat around and really thought, what is the meaning of a friend? Not in somebody else's language, in your own language. What do you think a friend is? If you think that's what a friend is, B, are you a friend to anybody? C, can you be a friend to anybody? What's your track record? And then you're back to the main thesis. What do you want a friend for? Can't hack it alone? Get the idea, not too many people spend a great deal of time thinking these things through. I dare say that very few people ever think things through on any subject. I just received a dirty look. But I will. Did you just snort? Are you one of the horses for the race?
Feels like it sometimes.
Where's the finish line already? I've been running for 18 years. I've circumnavigated the globe, and here I am, back in Mount Vernon or wherever they have horse races. Now, I've asked this one before, so the conociente are already hip to this. What do you believe will happen to you if and when you die? It's not too obscene a question. I think anybody over 8 realizes that they're going to die. What do you believe is going to happen to you? Now such an interesting question as that is, for me, it's the most fascinating question in the world. Does anybody ever sit down and say, "Oh, wait, let me have another coffee. What's going to happen to me when I die?" Ba-da-dum. I found the floor. That's one way, instantaneous. Maybe I'll be sick and die for a long, long time. Tubes, needles, nurse, nurse, nurse. I'm sorry, it's after 6 o'clock. You'll have to wait for the doctor tomorrow. Well, Hemingway said, what I'll do is I'll kill myself. But look at the mess he made out of that apartment. Can you imagine brain pieces and blood and all over the wall? Then somebody has to come, probably an uncitizened worker in California, they clean up this mess for more than probably pay $3.80 an hour or something. But there you are. Now you're finished. At last you're finished. Now, is there anything inside you that's going to go any place? Some people believe they will go to heaven. Some people erroneously believe they will go to heaven. Some people realize that they probably will go to hell. As in those good gangster pictures, just in the very last few moments when it's the end. See you in hell, Chuck. That's real guys. And I guess lots of people go to different places. Where are you going? Maybe you don't, that's what I say. Maybe you don't exactly know. Maybe it's a toss-up. Maybe it's a contest. Maybe you got to prove your stuff. But in your own thinking, which is the freedom of thought, do you believe you're going to any place? Maybe different religions have different rest homes. But where are you going? 2, perhaps maybe even, where would you like to go? That'll reveal to you what kind of a person you are. And then you can tell the significant other. Honey, I want to go to heaven. Heaven? Are you kidding, you jerk? There's no such thing as heaven. Where do you want to go? Where do your friends want to go? Where do people that you know of want to go? If you can take it, I'll ask you where do you want to go, but please don't answer me. I may not be able to take the response. Some people say it's all over. There's nothing to go any place. You keel over, and they pick you up, and they throw you in the dumpster, and away you go. Tuesday morning pickup, away you go. Nothing more to think about. The only zets I can give somebody is whatever you believe is going to happen to you, or what's left of you, whatever you believe, are you living your life out in terms of that? Or are you just what we used to call in Harlem a jive merchant? Oh, I want to go to heaven. Yes. What do you do to go to heaven? I want to go here, I want to go there. What are you doing in terms of it? Hey, what you just did yesterday morning is taking you a step further from what you say you want should happen. I'm sure there's some perverse person here who's going to say they believe in reincarnation. Wow. Nobody would have the nerve to admit that here, because they know that my next question is, well, what are you doing about it? Gil, I can't think anymore. I don't have the time for this. Time is money. I could be out selling bananas for $4 an hour or something. I can't think about these things. I'll ask my priest. He knows. Sunday morning I go. You go Saturday, Rabbi. Ask somebody who knows. Well, what are you doing in terms of where you want to go? Either up there, down there, in the dumpster, or coming back as a movie feature. People don't think about this. Oh, I hate being a dentist. I got bit. People bleed all over me. Yeah, Jeffrey, but you said that 13 years ago. You're still a dentist. So one of the questions is, why do people keep doing what they're doing? Get the picture? It's like there's dozens of these questions that require much head scratching. What actor in what movie scratched his head, Pamela?
Little Kong.
Man, the woman's a wizard. Absolute wizard. No one else would have known that, Pam. I know that. What do they know from Little Kong? They don't even know from Big Kong. You realize that people talking to themselves for hours, it need be, for months, for years, for an entire lifetime. I know that those sneaky little kids are talking to themselves before they talk to you. They talk to themselves from the moment they open their eyes until the moment they die. And they don't think about anything. They just talk. Because talking to yourself is not thinking. Thinking is a very, very structured plan with points you get to and points that come out of points. I think some scientists know how to think, at least about the subject they're on, but that's thinking. Most people don't. I don't know why I'm doing this, I don't know. It seems like forever and ever. And it might be a good idea to, this summer, in fact, that reminds me, 8 summers ago, and then now we can talk for another 6 hours, and then's when I met Anthony. Oh, you've seen this guy, Anthony. I forgot what his name was. Anthony A. Adams, Anthony Brown. Then if you're lucky, you step in front of a car and your whole damn story ends. Nobody has to know about you anymore. I make an official presentation that man can't think, doesn't know how to think, doesn't dare think. And if he thought, he'd probably slap himself on his own wrist. If he really gave himself some honest answers, he'd do more than slap himself on his wrist. George, why do you want to be a dentist? Oh, I love teeth. An hour later, it's a good income, it's a solid income, but 5 hours later or 5 years later, I hate dentistry. My father said it would be a good idea and he wasn't going to send me any more money if I didn't become a dentist. I wanted to become a pool shooter in a pool room or something, but he insisted I be a dentist, and here I am, a dentist. Mama don't allow no saxophone playing here. Mama don't allow no saxophone playing here. We don't care what Mama don't allow. We're going to play saxophone anyhow. Mama don't allow no saxophone playing here. The saxophone playing. Did your mama allow saxophone playing? Are you blaming her for everything? Yeah. Well, to really sit down and really think of where you are and what you contributed to think the whole thing of your life. Really thinking, not just talking Romanian to yourself, is a job that very few people ever do. And even less than that can take the results. And as a musician, sometimes on the stand we play some of the introductory songs, and then the orchestra leader, sometimes me, sometimes my partner. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we invite to dance only the happily married couples. Ooh, people get up, yeah, some people. And now, we invite only the unhappily married couples. Ooh, let's go. And you get a crowd. Now there's more on the dance floor. And Hal Silvers, who was my buddy, my boss, my partner, he would always add, and now we invite only those people who got married for money and then didn't get it. Place would jump up, people would climb out of their chairs. A great time was had by all. But somebody either you know now, or will know, or even closer than that, will sit in their living room one day and say, yeah, I married her for her money. Or him. I didn't get it. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. Or I married this person for this reason or that reason and didn't have. Then the next door neighbor will come over and say, hey, you should have thought about this years ago. Did you know that in the 30s and 40s and 50s, an awful lot of people, thousands and thousands and thousands, were conceived in the back seat of a car? Most of the guys from my neighborhood, girls from my neighborhood, their marriages got formulated in the back seat of a car. Or on leave from a war pass, or what have you. But people don't think too much. So now, let's hear some comments from the cheerful few. Please, no coughing while I'm talking. Come on. Somebody must be courageous enough.
I was
Yes.
thinking while the chair was speaking of his last point a lot throughout the speech, and that is what is thought and what is real thought.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about a lot of times I'll think of something and it does seem like just the same track going over and over, and that's not thought. So thinking what is thought, and that what is real thought, and that to add that to the other questions that would present us tonight, and that one seems almost of more importance than all the others, to first know what is real thought.
Seems somebody has to know how to think before they can think. Isn't it odd the schools don't teach you this? They teach you numbers, put this number together with that number and you get this number. You're never really taught how to think. What's the process of thinking? What's the purpose of thinking? How do you think? Are you getting closer to knowing how to think?
I've been thinking about it.
I thought you were going to say, I think so.
It was one of the two.
I was never taught how to think. Not in my home, nor in my school. I looked a lot into it. I read somewhere that there is the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. But I don't understand that either. In my observation, I have learned that I'm a product of a system that makes me believe in these things. And I pretty much have, I think that you've said it, an ABC, and I think A, B, and C, and then I say, wow, A, C, and B. This is great thinking. But it's always the same, to the left, to the right. How do I really think? I think is like It's like a noise. Wake up in the morning and the whole mind starts worrying this, that, and it never ends. But then sometimes you get a glimpse of something that is real. Maybe it's the intelligence of the heart, an idea that is pure. You've never seen it before. And I think the beginning is to recognize that. You know, I cannot erase what was created. I cannot kill it. I think what I have to do is I have to endure it. It comes and it won't affect me in a way, which means it exists. I walk down the street, I see Ralph Lauren and I see the image and I see all this advertising and this image that is created and I want to be a part of it and I want it, and I actually in my observation I see that I crave for that. It's crazy. How am I to think? I think we need a lot of attention. I need to develop a very specific attention that I can bring only in a very particular state of mind. And only at this place I can think. It always wants to go. It's like a balloon with this helium, you know, it always goes, it's really hard. But I think I can train the mind. Because when I think a lot of something, I understand it. I think the word for me is contemplating on something that is real. Do I want to have a child? Yes, I do. I always wanted to have a child. And I couldn't have a relationship. I couldn't. My first real relationship was at 30-something. It was crazy. I couldn't. Through only this work and through enduring another person, I never get lonely. Never got lonely. Ever. Always wanted to be alone. And for me to have a girl in my house was an effort that was extremely difficult. Still is. But I wanted a family. I felt a fire inside of me to become a father. I don't care about the world, there's so many children. I want to be a father. Maybe I wanted to be the father I never had. I don't know. But this is what I wanted to do. It wasn't easy. And I'll give it everything I have until the day I die to become and to be, because I really not only thought about it, I struggle and I will struggle with it for the rest of my life. I can't say that I've done a lot of things like that in many fields. I will do though. As I progress, as I develop my attention and increase my consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Until one day I will know exactly what I came here to do and just do it.
Do you believe you came here to do something?
Of course.
In terms of thinking, I think that it's important to know how to write. And it's important to be in the position where you're forced to do things that you don't know how to do. I'm thinking specifically about writing. That, and also presentations is another form where you put yourself in a position where you have to refine your thinking. So I remember years ago trying to just write something. I really wasn't in a position in terms of my work where I had to write. And what I wrote, at that point maybe I wrote a journal. And it was so sentimental. And rereading it, it was really totally uninteresting. And in terms of work, we had to practice a lot in terms of work we did here to write about many ideas and to try to see how one thought. Now, my ability to speak was always quite good, to articulate certain ideas in some areas in comparison to my ability to write. So in terms of having founded Tribal Link, I have to write a lot of things. And as I get more capacity, I can get other people to write. But I've had to struggle to write things, and it took me really a long time. But when I look back at them, they're not bad. And they're not, because it's writing about real issues, it's not sentimental. And then I find just practicing writing, so I find, I spoke about the presentation I gave in France and how James really wrote it. I wrote half of it. And it was my attempt at writing that then the next level of being articulate and clear was what he used to write something else. But I think the ability to be well educated and that skill is essential, so that I feel, and I always say this, that the work demands us to become very refined. And like was said about people in other ages where they were skilled in the arts, in writing and instruments, that we really don't have that ability in society that much. We're not that refined. Some people are, but I feel the possibilities for many more people to have those skills if they train themselves. And I think it's a necessity that you're demanded to do things by what you do externally. That most of what I've learned, I've been forced to do. Because Albert is talking about being a father. My life is devoted to study and to do things that change society, that help preserve, as the mandate in the work at the UN, the mandate to do with biodiversity, and they have a whole agency, people, where I just was this past week, to save life on Earth. And I would say that's my driving force. And creatures and plants and the human being.
But the way Mark has taken your writings, and that is very much in progress. There's a disc on it, and more discs will be made. And then probably by next week I'll have the originals of what we have back in my office.
Thank you to everyone.
Yeah, everyone got into that project.
I would just add something that's different than our subject, but that I think one of the most important realizations for people is to to realize that their life force, their energy toward others is a difference between life or death for those souls at times. And there's also, if it's not a matter of life or death, it's a great loss and potential. And that there's only a certain amount of energy each person has. And that energy is multiplied by the force of others really taking action. Like for Gil to have decided that the writing should go to the next step. It's probably something that I might not have gotten to at all. You either need more money or more time or more capacity. And like my work with Indigenous people, without added force, that person isn't going to leave the forest, and their habitat is going to be destroyed, or they're going to be killed. So these exchanges of energy are profound. To me, all of those things, that is your life. And you can, in what you remember the people that gave you something on that level. You don't really remember anything else. The rest is just that monologue of useless chatter. But like I said here with the presentation in France, that only was possible by the support I got. And like that, each thing, I remember from my whole life, those people who actually gave me something I actually needed. And people don't ask each other, what do you need? People will tell you. If you're sincere in asking them, they will absolutely tell you.
Demonstrates how many sincere people you've met.
Not many. I think people have a desire to be that kind of person. And usually when you hear about it, having worked with people who are dying, that's when you find out. That's when they tell you. When they're about to die.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't seem to sort of say it. They were either embarrassed or they thought, being deep is thought of as being corny by a lot of people, being sort of, kids are taught to be sort of, or they teach each other to be superficial. That's what's cool, to not be deep. And that overlay is often there for their whole life.
We live in a culture that I dare say is almost totally dominated by profit and that mentality. How come in the vast amount of movies or TVs or dramas or what have you, the college professor, the scientist, the astrological observer never gets the girl? What woman is going to run away with a biologist? You run away with a trombone player, clarinet player, maybe. So we live in that culture. Well, part of what I seek to do is to help people not have to fall into the same dopey pitfalls that I fell into. They were dopey. Pam says people telling you, talking to you, helping you. Well, there's an average guy, an average working class background too. I come from a world where no one ever spoke to me intelligently. Everybody was very passionate about what bothered them or what turned them on, but it was never honest. It was never real. Come on, what are you going to do with that saxophone? You'll never make a dime. Blah, blah, blah. That was one side of it. Go say, yeah, I want you to be a star, was the other side. Oh. I never had a human being or a mentor or somebody awake enough or intelligent enough to really go through it with me. Hey Gil, why do you want to play the saxophone? Yeah, it took me till I'm 70 to figure out what I would like you to figure out before you get to be 40 or wherever you are. Yeah. The girls playing the saxophone. That got me started. The more I stayed in it, the more girls I met. And the better and the better. It was always rotated around. Some applause, girls, etc. Playing the saxophone, to play the saxophone, to create music. I really didn't come too close on that one. Then once you're in it and you're 25 or 30, you got to stay in it because it's the only way you know how to pay the rent. So I like to see people really put their minds to something and come up with some sort of intelligent thought. Derek says not knowing how to think. Yeah. One little tip is, what do you think today about this? Get up and write it on a piece of paper, because if it goes into the mind is like the waste management of the world. Write on a piece of paper, and you're allowed to write out 150 pages every day, a different page on a subject. And at the end you review it, you say, gee, this one's it, this one. But over here is a pile about this high compared to a pile about that high. These are, most days, I think this way about this. You find somebody who's not emotionally involved with you. Well, what do you think of this? And that's what mentors and therapists and analysts and so forth are there to do. Because the vast majority of us are propelled around by our emotions. We're angry, we're sad, it's emotional. And then we talk to our mother, who's also emotional. And she's got her ideas. She wants her son to be a doctor or whatever. And our father is emotional. He wants his son to be a real fella. And our uncle and everybody around is what they call vested. They have an emotional tie-up with the kid. In some way push him to do something. And then the kid does just the opposite of what his Uncle Harry tells him to do, because the kid hates Uncle Harry. Even if Harry's right, the kid's going to do the opposite. Where do you find a person who is not invested in you, who doesn't really care whether you become a doctor or you become a whatever the hell you become? Who cares? Here's the issue. Let's just think. As an expertise in thinking. Very few people can do that, very few people will do that, very few people know how to do that. So I say, well, let's ask people 1,000 times, and I ask people 100 times the same question in a different suit, same questions. What are you doing? Where are you going? The whys and whys.
I have a comment about thinking. many people believe that thinking means sorting out some facts. If A plus B equals C, yes, except if D is present, then subtract B, blah, blah, blah. Change the order around. And I would like to present that thinking has very little to do with facts and a lot to do with imagination. I think true thinking involves imagining an outcome, or more than one outcome. It involves imagining consequences of actions. And in the realm of imagination, that's where all the centers can intersect. The intellectual center can reason. The emotional center can imagine what something will feel like. The moving center can imagine the things that relate to it. Sometimes far better than we can do in our actual moment on the physical plane with the bodies and the minds and emotions that we have at this present moment. But when the imagination is engaged, I think then we can place ourselves in various situations and say, well, when I'm a dentist, I'll be getting up at 6:30. I'll be going into my office. My first patient will arrive 9 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. My day will go like this. How will I feel? I will feel good. I'm helping people. I'm making a good living. I'm providing for my family. What will it be like? I'll be touching. I'll be putting my hand inside people's mouths. I'll be wearing those gloves. Maybe I'll have like a mask on. People will have pain. I might hurt people. What will I say to people when I have them in my chair? Then when my day is finished, what will I feel like when I go home? So now I've had this experience in my imagination, and I can take this experience and bring it back to the present moment where I am right now. And I think that's what thinking is. I think true thinking can only happen when all the centers are engaged, and all the centers can only be truly engaged to their maximum by using the imagination.
This week, I went into the idea of, I didn't call it thinking. Well, in my life, what's worked for me, if I need a solution to something, I've been playing with these blocks up here a long time. I remember Carlos Castaneda saying, you have all your blocks and your parts on the table, and you're thinking, no, this looks better here. Move that around there. Yes, take this with. And he said, and then you turn around, you see, if you have eyes, you've just been moving the same pieces around on the same tabletop. You've got a different order of the same pieces. I came to have a big distrust of that sort of thing from my mind. I believe that around me are my spirits, my spirit guides, and that entire belief system that I fully subscribe to. I don't have any doubt about it. I ask those forces around me, what's the best way for me to go? I ask those forces all the time, the person I'm speaking to. My mind would say this and the other, but now I've been at it so long, I don't go with what my mind says. What do my spirits say? And generally, almost always, I'll come up with something, an opinion, something that I can say didn't arise out of my logistic intelligence, arises from something else. That's another way of thinking. I dare say I write from that. I live from that. That's not going to be everyone's way of thinking and living. So that's why I ask, what do you believe in? And do you believe in it thoroughly enough to be at rest with it? And then you start to find who you are. It's by groping and wrestling with these huge, life-shaping ideologies that you begin to find what you believe is so. Because you're the one who has to live through your belief system. And if you don't go with it, there won't be a firm base to live by.
I think that if I take what I heard here and my experiences / observations in my life, I'll say that my capacity to think is non-existent. At least the way I perceive it, like what my understanding of a thinking process. If I'll compare my ability to think, I'll think of a computer. And the only information available to me, or to the mind, to my brain, is whatever it gathered from outside, whatever it was taught. And so if I would compare it, I'd compare it to moving the blocks on the table. The only thing it can do is just play around with the same ideas over and over again, trying to come up with different structures, which it calls thought. But I have not been satisfied with its ability. Let's say it this way: it does not. If I use Pamela's words, it does not. I don't find any interest in that kind of process. It does not satisfy me at all. And where I do connect and find, I can't say I find answers, but it's because it's not in words, but it's more in, I wouldn't say feelings either, because it's not feely touchy, but it's some sort of non-verbal thing. is I'm going back to like Thursday meeting when we meet here with Pamela, and it's when I stop trying to think, and when I move aside, something else steps in. I can't say it thinks, but it has it communicates something, and it's not a word, it's not a verbal communication. And I guess what I can do while receiving the communication is, and because the only way that I, Yossi, can communicate that communication is with those things that I have collected and been taught, I have to use words. But when I start trying to communicate these things, it'll always come out kind of, it's airy, it's very spacious. I'm not really putting across a very, it's open. It can be taken anywhere. It's not, what I will communicate is a spaciousness. And that's as close as, that's what I will call thinking that will that I feel comfortable in that realm. It's a more creative thinking. It's not limiting anything. It's not defining it really. It always keeps it open. I'm using that kind of thought, say, when I say create an image, when I take a photograph and work on the computer. I'm not thinking of it looks good, I like it, I don't like it. I feel like I'm kind of manipulating sort of matter. It's like it's something that's not verbal. I don't think lighter, darker, maybe I'll put red. It's like moving things around to a place where then something inside and Yossi on the outside can say, okay, what I see, I think, is something close to where it wants to be. Not to where I want it to be.
Where it belongs.
Yes. So it's kind of like, I can take what Albert said when he said before that he's here to do something. I know I'm here to do something, but I cannot say in words what it is that I am here to do. I can't say that I'm not doing it enough. I do not devote enough of my time to serving that, to doing what it is that I'm here to do. I want to take the opportunity to say, because when Gil was speaking, the answer that came, like, to answer a few of the questions, like, where are you going? And what came to me was, I'm going home. And then I asked, what is home? And it's all like, I always get lines from songs, and it came, home is where the heart is. So that those were the answers that came from me. And when Gil said, time is money, what came from me was, time is on my side.
I hope you get 5 years. See, the pieces that we're talking about on the table, that's a three-dimensional world. That's the 3 ways. The 4th way is another dimension, another logistic. Has to do with an intuitive direction. So many people will think this object here will bring more money, will bring more success, will bring more fame, will make me feel better. And very few people think anything that exists has an intent. So if you start living from intent and you begin to live within yourself the knowledge of intention, then you see that everything has an intention. Like a gravity, a sense of space where it is. And at some point the painter says, that's it, everything, don't touch it anymore. He could have said that 5 minutes before, would have been a different painting, or afterwards. But this is the instant where the dimensions cross. Be careful, because when you don't put something in words, you're gambling that you may be deceiving yourself. There are just about enough words available to you to describe everything. Make great, honest efforts to put things into words yourself. And write. Pamela tells you, write a million times. Because the mind is not to be believed. The mind is tricky, it forgets, it runs on passion. The nutrients that run the brain are plain nutrients, like vitamins and chemicals, and that's what runs the brain. When the brain doesn't get a certain amount of nutrients or chemicals that it needs, it starts to go off. Very common that in hepatitis, one of the first things that's noticed when the person gets it is that their thinking goes off, radically off. Then somebody around can say, wow, this could be a possible hepatitis condition because the thinking goes off.
I found it an interesting exercise that I had done for a few years when I went to the museum and would write once a week, is to find a memory of something that I found very interesting, but I had never tried to describe it. But then I would see it in my mind, and it was a really interesting exercise because it was hard to do. And then slowly, I tried. I don't know if it came, I don't remember all of those times, but it was really interesting to just take an impression that was more visual and emotional, and then try to describe it in words, which I find poetry does justice to that whole realm of description. But I would do that every Tuesday night for a few years. I just tried to keep seeing that image or whatever it was as being a child sitting in the living room looking at the ceiling and the emotional feeling I had about that. And just pick different times that I was reminded of when Yossi was speaking.
If the parts are in balance, the emotional center is in balance. When it's in balance, it brings forth ideas of friendship. Through enough work on balancing the parts, the emotional center gains a certain amount of sanity. It isn't the emotional center functioning sanely or functioning insanely or temporary madness or temporary jealousies and angers and manifestations of movement like that. The emotional center becomes dependable and balanced. It starts to think in terms of something, a thought or an event that comes to it and finds a comfort in it. It finds a certain amount of comfort and well-being in a certain thought.
I found what Gil just said very significant, because that's where these, I'll start again, but that I find that with hundreds of things, this component of emotion is really a significant aspect, and that that's where the essence self moves forward into reality. For example, in France, the gentleman who came from the Convention on Biological Diversity, the diplomat that came, he was a very wonderful man. He was from India. And I think another component is like when somebody speaks and they have this emotional balance in what they're presenting, that you are able to listen. I find that I remember those impressions totally. As a photograph, I remember all the words. So that man, you have a connection with that person. Next time I see him last week at the office in Montreal, the man walks into the office. He says a few things. They're significant. Spends maybe 10 minutes with us. What I'm doing is I'm connecting to that emotional place. That's emotion. It's not emotion how people use it to be in love with someone or something from the ordinary ego world. It's a very subtle, emotional statement that has great meaning. And it's also one's ability to recognize that and to be listening. By simply listening, being present, you are creating like a thread, like a plant that has like a runner on it for the new part of the plant. That sensibility at that moment will create another encounter in the future. And this sense of emotional balance is how you move forward to have an essence life. And it builds in many, many things. You know, what each person says here has that kind of capacity. And I find that thrilling. It would be almost like, what is that place? Or, you know, I'm sure Sue feels that way about things that she creates in music. It's like a world of observation and sensation, of sensing. And that's how everything I do furthers itself. But until Gil just said that, I didn't quite speak about it in the way I am at this moment. And it is a sense of emotional balance. It is using your emotions to create it's that sense you have when you're a child, or you have a favorite teacher, or a favorite friend, or some little treasure that you have. You fall in love with these things, and when you grow up, the ego takes over and puts you into this slot of stuff, of these emotions which are quite dense. And quite, like almost like drinking too much. They're very, they pull people around. They distract them from the types of things that people have come here to do in terms of evolution. They're fine, but they're distracting.
They're here to balance centers. The emotion cannot or should not be stronger than the physical. The physical has to be nurtured in a way that structures the other parts. Perhaps often the terminology should be changed from love to appreciation. I have these appreciations of things that are constant. I've developed a passion for working with weights. And one of the passions is that today I'll go to lift a weight, and I can do it. Tomorrow I'll go, and it'll be more difficult, or I can't do it. And I must reflect that it is me that has changed. That is a constancy. Those 120 pounds or whatever they are, they will be the same for years and years. They'll be the same into my future. It's me that goes through the changes. I can't count on me being the same. I can count on the weight being constant. So a lot of my changes, a lot of my validations have to do with things like my weights, the animals around me. I've been asking people as I build my home gym, if you have barbells and plates and what have you, donate them in. So by now I've got a pretty nice collection. It's hard to get big 50-pound plates. 5-pound plates by the dozen. So I speak to a friend who Sue and I had met because they had an antique shop in Pennsylvania that we used to frequent. Since then they've closed the shop, they've moved out of town. The friendship stays. And I asked one of them, if you run into any plates and things, and send them my way. Sure. She calls me not too much longer and says, I spoke to my mother. Now there's a woman in her 50s already. I spoke to my mother, and she said that in her cellars, somebody somewhere from the last 50 years, they left some plates that kind of rusted. They're there. Do you want them? Yes, bring them along. So I meet her, and she unloads. The mother was a rather aged woman, but everybody unloaded this pickup truck, a ton of plates and barbells, kind of rusted, and they needed some work. Okay, I get them home, and I work on them, and I see that these are not just contemporary plates that have been left in the cellar. These are old plates and old collars. They are historic. They're from the 40s and 50s. And as I take some more rust off, I see one of the plates says, Dan Lurie. Just Dan Lurie. Do the research. Dan Lurie was one of the early 1940 strongmen. And he opened up a barbell manufacturing company, I think at 1397 Bay Parkway or something in Brooklyn, in his parents' house, in his cellar. He started this little thing. And then he became a worldwide seller of an entire career. And I would like to meet Dan Lurie, because Dan Lurie somehow, I don't know how, because these are all magical people. And to get to see magical people, you got to be a little magical too, or else it doesn't mean a damn thing. Somehow, Dan Lurie, as a guy already in his 70s, he gets into President Ronald Reagan's office. And somehow, of course, inviting him, Reagan, he gives an award that he has made to President Reagan, and he said, I'm giving you this because you are the fittest, healthiest president that has ever been in the United States. So he proceeds in this video to read off this entire proclamation, which takes about 8 minutes of his reading. And of course, you're a hefty guy, getting older. And Ronald Reagan is smiling until Ronald Reagan is smiling. Well, he said, when this thing will end, you know. So he says to the president, and because you are such a fit guy, I challenge you to an arm wrestling. Gets Ronald Reagan to arm wrestle with him. And then at the end of the thing he writes, I let President Reagan win twice. So I think somewhere along the line, when this weight was first manufactured and sent out, probably some skinny kid, like I was a skinny kid, says, I'm going to lift these weights and I'm not going to be the victim, the 95-pound weakling who gets pushed around by the bully on the beach. And all these weights and things have a history of people who worked on them for various reasons, and now at the end, and this weight will go on long after I'm gone, comes and lands at this guy who's saying, I'm going to work like mad to keep the health I've got, the strength I've got. And this weight is, if we're going to give it consciousness, is there to continue to do something, and it will continue after I'm gone. Well, that's the way people are, that's the way ideas are, that's the way music is. That when Yossi starts to think in terms of magic, there is a world of magic, as far as I'm saying. A world of magic that exists all around us in 1,000 dimensions, and we can either say, no, the world of magic does not exist, it's here. I'm going to move these pieces until I learn something. Or there's a world of magic that says, I'm going to ask, beg, implore the world of magic to enter me and bring me some kind of wisdom that I can figure out a way to do where I want to do that's out of the box. And that's where I think creative thought comes from, where art comes from, where the unexpected comes from, where one puts out one's hand and says, please bless me, touch me, give me, because I can't move these pieces anymore, because the more I move them, the less happens, and the more nuts I become. Thank you, Pat. You heard that? So here you've been. You've endured all this so far. How are you? How are you feeling? What do you think?
It's good to listen to you and hear what other people think about things that don't often get talked about. And yeah. So thank you. It's nice to be here.
Thanks for coming. You're welcome to come. He'll give you the schedule. You can even come without him. Sometimes you don't have to take a horse to the race. And how have you been, Sammy?
Well, the one thing that kept popping up in my mind was when we're talking about thinking is discipline. And what Sue described as, her interpretation of thinking takes a great deal of discipline. And distraction is all around us, and we constantly have something to stop us from thinking. And I can't, I can't count the number of times where I decided, all right, you know what? I'm going to turn off the TV, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to think about this, and it's bothering me. And almost always it takes maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something comes up, I get distracted, and the mind wanders and it's gone. And it's the same old routines, the discipline. But sometimes, for that brief amount of effort that I put into it, things start to pop up and I see things, and it's refreshing. But it doesn't last. It's, again, distractions, mind wandering. But I imagine it's like working out. You have to keep doing it. And one day, do a nice workout and feel good about it.
Except the one day that you work out and you drop a 90-pound plate on your foot. That day works out a little bit differently. Thank you. That's so true. I often say that the bulk of this work is discipline. It's not magic like poof poof, it's there. We're talking about a different kind of magic. It's discipline, which is a great deal of magic in itself. Someone says, well, I do this. I said I would do it, and I did it most of the time, practically all the time. I say, but you can't say that about, I cross the street without getting hit by a car most of the time, because it hurts on that other time when you do get hit. So there's an amazing lack of determination and discipline in people. Talk all they want about it. It doesn't start. It should start when you're 3, but it doesn't start until you're 70. But it's discipline. It's the capacity to say, I will do this 500 times, not 490. And then you can do anything once you have discipline as an ability, as a quality. Then you can think, then you can do anything because you can do what you said you would do. That takes a lot of patience, a lot of work. That's the work as I presented. It's a matter of discipline. Can I count on you? I said to this guy. He said, yes, he said, but if you don't do it, then if I say, oh, this means this is really discipline. Yeah, it's really discipline. If I ask you to give $1 every morning to a little old lady on the street so she can eat, the day you forget to do it, she doesn't eat. And it's that way with everything we have and everything around you. Got a goldfish? Got to feed him. Or else you walk in and you got to starve to dead goldfish with everything. Johnny, you were going to say something. Excuse me.
We spoke about the horse in the beginning, and the image of the horse is what stayed with me, because to me what's important for the horse is to maintain what you call a certain composure during his journey. It's not about knowing where it's going. It's not about knowing how long the ride is going to be, and whether it's going to win over the other horses, or when it's going to get food, and how hot it is, thirsty it feels, and all those worries and concerns. It's about going through that journey, maintaining a certain level of attention, and not being distracted by things that either cannot know or cannot control. And that's what makes this person work. Paying attention to where he's putting his feet. Not whether he knows how long the journey is going to last and how is he going to fare compared to someone else.
You know, I often ask, why? Why you want to learn how to think? To be richer? To be better? Like the marketing lady in my cafe. It's like, you know, I need to be creative. I said, what do you want? This is my business. We need to come up with ideas. I said, what kind of ideas? This is ideas, you know, look at Apple. This is, look. I'm thinking, not, big thinking, but I'm thinking, what does Apple do that I need? Tell me. Zero. They make now a new car that goes from 100 to 100 in 4 minutes. What do I care about that? This is going to change me. I think a lot of people want to know how to think to make more money, to play the same game that we always do. You know what I think about? Or I want to learn how to think about? How am I so afraid, and how come it looks so real when it's not real? It amazes me how this system works. I have so many fears, none of them material, none of them. And I keep being afraid, and I keep getting paralyzed.
That's what you learn to think for, so that you don't find yourself in that position.
Yes. So a lot of time I said to myself, is thinking a mechanism, or thinking is tapping into a source that is not available to everybody? I sometimes read books. I have
go
no
with
idea.
the latter.
What?
I go with the latter.
Yeah.
See, one day, for you, Albert, the family you're raising, the children you're having, they will ask you questions that is not the answer that works that an intelligent person will give. You're going to have to give an answer, a response that will put that person on a better road and keep them on the road. That's where your thinking will take place, your magical thinking. What McDonald's does, that's just internet thinking. What you're talking about is constructive, creative thinking for the purpose of bettering people's lives, bettering your own life, having conclusions that make the world a somewhat better place to live, because that's your job.
I think the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I used to think that I want to know how to think to make my life better. I want to see 3 steps ahead. That's what I want. I deserve to see 3 steps ahead. There is people who I know who can see ahead. I cannot. I have to struggle. So for many years I'm trying to learn how to think. But you know what I think? I think that if I will learn how to tap, how to be in the state of mind of this magic, the regular thing will be a byproduct of an enlightened, a man who developed a consciousness, a man that sees from a different point of view. It's moving to see something and not...
That's what I'm talking about. I call it thinking.
Okay.
I have no interest in what's going to happen to the big 3. Will they get their loan and what will they do? That's not thinking.
Mark's always, to me, thinking synonymous with challenging. Since Mark first thought many years ago as an adolescent and teenager, to how Mark would apply his thinking to education and even to the work, what attracted Mark to the work was, why does Mark think anything is true, or why does Mark think that what someone says is true, and challenge my thinking from school books that I've read to the belief systems that I have, to the point where it almost shatters Mark's reality, the belief system, and realizing Mark doesn't know much about anything. And then when Mark applies his thinking to something, it's now more goal-oriented, thinking, why do I want to achieve something? And then to go after that and determine what it takes to make that happen. And it's a sense of relief not to have to know why something is a certain way, but it's that constant challenging. And even tonight, thinking, well, why does Mark have these goals to be this business person, or to come to this meeting, and to really shake the foundations of what Mark is thinking, or what Mark's belief system is, and to not just fly blindly, because that happens so easily, it can happen so automatically. Mark has found that throughout his life. So why does Mark think he has to go to college? Why does Mark think that he's straight? Why does Mark think that the first history book that he's read is true? Or does Mark read other history books? Why does what someone says, why does Mark need to believe that? Or why is Mark associating himself with these people? And Mark finds that there's many, many different layers, and to really strike at the core belief system is, and to really think about fundamentally why Mark thinks a certain way. That's really what sets Mark off into what Mark believes thought is, and the thought rises from that into what Mark's thinking is.
So where are you going when you die?
Mark thinks there's energy inside him that's going to go somewhere, but Mark's not sure. And Mark thinks that perhaps this is already happening, but time is a constant, but everything else is flowing dimensional. Maybe it's already been determined. And Mark isn't aware yet of what that is going to be. So Mark ponders it more. Perhaps Mark will discover it.
What you say is true. We don't know what's going to be. but we should certainly have a very clear picture of where we are now. Somebody may change their idea of what will happen to them when they die, or 5 years from now, or whenever. But they should have a pretty clear idea of what they believe today. Because to go someplace else, you should know where you are now. You should always know where you are, where it is that you are leaving from, and where it is that you think you're going to. Or else you could walk around in the woods forever and ever. Make clear markings on a tree as you pass it. See, you're beginning to learn right now how to glow. Right now you changed your level of thought, you changed your level of being. You did, the man on your left did, the man on your right, and 2 men over here. In fact, the entire room altered. Just when I said it did, it altered. No one is seeing anything at this moment the way they saw it when they walked in. There are changes in time, there are changes in perception, there are changes in being. Find where you are at any particular point and know where you are in terms of being and in terms of consciousness. Then you'll know where you are leaving from and when you've arrived where. Because right now, this instant, you are very, very much more awake than you've been all evening. And that goes for people alongside with you. The room moved.
Yes, it seems like that. It seems like my vision is different. Things are a little wavier, and what I was seeing before has changed somewhat. And it makes me wonder where I am exactly.
Work is founded upon knowing where you are in terms of being. All the centers have to balance. If one of the centers is somewhat off, the entire structure is off. Well, let me wish everyone happy holidays and Thanksgivings and trees and parties and a very, very good fortune. This is our last meeting of this year, this Thursday. We've weathered another year. Somehow some of us oldies have weathered 33 years here. Isn't that amazing? I can't believe it. I haven't been arrested or anything like that. Thanks again. May the invisible bless you. You are all people who know how to love and deserve love and friendship. God bless you. Oh, you're not the maestro tonight. The maestro is here tonight. The real maestro.
The maestro doesn't have an orchestra, he cannot do anything. No music.
So you're waiting for the waiter to do something, and the waiter's going to look for the busboy.
We'll put something together.
There, now you're more able to do it.
You've been meeting it 33 years? You're old, huh?
If she's old, don't talk to me. She was a child when I met her.
Practicing being strong, 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 strong,